The freedom of the press in China is disappearing before our eyes.
We live in the information age, and if you can set the narrative and you can control and manage information, then you have power.
Now we're sort of seeing kind of an alignment with Ukraine and Russia, and China really seems to have taken a lot advantage of the new COVID surge that they're apparently having over there, with Shanghai getting shut down. And how do you think this up, like them taking 2 years of continuously controlling a lot of the communication? How is that going to affect journalism in China and freedom of press in China moving forward?
The freedom of the press in China is disappearing before our eyes. The last real free press hub in Asia that actually could report on what was going on inside mainland China was Hong Kong. And over the last 2 years or so, you've seen the slow strangulation of the free press in Hong Kong. And that's a sign of what's going on inside China. The fact that there is no one publicly who dares criticize or bring up for debate China's approach to the whole pandemic, which is zero COVID. In other words, sealing down whole neighborhoods or whole cities and trying to prevent the movement of people in order to hold the social spread of the disease. No one can question that. So the Chinese authorities have locked down Shanghai. That's 25 million people in one city, which is the economic and financial hub of China. And anyone that tries to question that publicly is shut down. They're either arrested or their social media accounts closed down so that their voices are silenced.
Does that affect the whole world? Just
Yeah.
by the fact of them proving and testing and using all these methodologies or new technologies and different ways of controlling human psychology? Is that something that will sort of affect us and other countries?
I mean, I think so, but you could also see it much more practically, which is that, information is a global, we live in this sort of global information system, right? So when China suppresses information about the origins of the disease and or suppresses information about whether it's airborne or not, that affects the whole trajectory of the pandemic. If there were a free press in China when this pandemic first emerged in Wuhan, maybe the outcome would have been different because, people knew about this strange, that people were getting sick and there was, this disease that was spreading, and you had, medical professionals sounding the alarm, and the Chinese government response was to suppress all of this information and to control it. And then, yes, it's true. Once they realized that there was a public health threat, they imposed the full authority of the state and to mobilize the society in ways that would have been impossible in a democratic society. But we have to recognize that the trajectory of the pandemic was set by Chinese censorship. And the other thing we need to understand is that around the world, according to a study carried out by Human Rights Watch, 83 countries suppressed essential rights, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, under the guise of protecting public health during the pandemic. So we saw this, Rob and I call it the COVID crackdown. We saw this wave of censorship and information control, that swept the world and changed the kind of global political structures and power relationships in ways that are fairly significant and that we're just becoming aware of, because we live in the information age, and if you can set the narrative and you can control and manage information, then you have power. And we saw that play out during the pandemic in very negative ways, in ways that compromised public health rather than affirming it, and in ways that empowered, autocratic and repressive regimes and weakened democratic governments around the world.
Chinese scientists were aware of slowly they gained knowledge of what was happening in Wuhan towards the end of 2019. And we're afraid to say so publicly. It would be the very opposite of what scientists do, which is to publish results to let people know what's going on. If we and the rest of the world had had that knowledge in November, December, January, February, we would have had some kind of a jumpstart on the pandemic. But it was suppressed. It was suppressed by the Chinese state that put its full weight into crushing anyone that came out with that information. And so that policy has gained currency, if you like, because other countries that wanted to keep control of the narrative did the same thing. We saw it with Iran, which it then spread from China to Iran and on to Egypt and throughout the Middle East. And all those countries fared badly in terms of their COVID rates, of death rates and infection. And then to answer your other question, the Chinese also introduced mass surveillance. They already had a great surveillance state, but even more, because surveillance technology enables you to exercise social control. You can influence people's behavior. You can restrict it. And those Chinese companies that make this stuff, facial recognition scanners, temperature scanners, CCTV cameras, they sell this stuff abroad. They're now selling it to countries, whether it's in Africa or other parts of Asia or Latin America. And so I think that one of the outcomes of this pandemic is going to be an increase in biomedical surveillance and in just general surveillance. Because now in China, if you're infected, the government has your DNA, it has all your biometrics, and it can follow you anywhere. It can prevent you from traveling. It can prevent you from buying a train ticket or a plane ticket, and it can quarantine you. It has all the surveillance equipment it needs to keep you in your home. It puts an electronic lock on your door. And if you open your door, it immediately sets off a digital alarm to say that you're breaking quarantine if you've been put in quarantine. And if you step outside, facial recognition software will grab you immediately. So you've got an incredible surveillance state that is enabled by a very sophisticated propaganda policy and very sophisticated surveillance equipment and technology.
Wow. Yeah, so they have a case study for implementing this in other places. What can the people who want to fight for press freedom and freedom of speech, and what can we do?
This is an information environment in which political leaders are able to exploit in ways that undermine public trust, but perpetuate power. So I think if you're a concerned citizen, we need to find a way to break that cycle. And that means, if you live in a democratic country and you have the opportunity to participate, it means ensuring that, we have leaders who act in a responsible manner. And instead of using these powerful new information tools to divide and polarize us, regardless of the consequences for our society and our health and anything else, try and find ways to have a public square, a public dialogue, a public debate, a political debate that is healthy, and where differences are recognized and engaged with, but not exploited. So there's no magic bullet here, but I do think the path to a better future is fairly clear, in the sense that our political leadership in so many countries failed us during the pandemic. We need to use the tools that are available to us to hold those leaders accountable, and we need to make sure that future leaders use these technologies to manage and ensure a healthier public discourse.